Microsoft Fabric, a cost-effective data solution for small to medium enterprises. Hi, my name is Andy Nathan. I'm a senior client with Beyond Key. I'm joined today by Raj Christian, who is from Microsoft. He's their director for partner enablement, and Raman Shadia, who's our data science architect here at Beyond. Gentlemen, say hello.
Hello, hello everyone.
And thank
Hey,
you.
hello there.
And thank you everyone for joining us here today. I can see people are still coming in. Thank you so much as you join us here for Microsoft. In terms of what we're talking about today, we have 6 different areas for our agenda that we want to cover. Before we even dive into Microsoft Fabric, we want to give you a brief overview of who we are at Beyond Key. We're going to spend about 5 minutes discussing who we are at Beyond. Then we're going to dive into an overview of Microsoft Fabric, which Raj is going to lead. And in addition to that, he's also going to spend about 5 minutes talking about the architecture of Microsoft Fabric as well. At that point, we're then going to have a conversation with him. We have some prepared questions ahead of time, just getting his insights on how to use Microsoft Fabric for your organization. At that point, Raman will then take over and then do a Microsoft Fabric demo, which will be approximately 15 minutes. Finally, we'll do another set of questions again with Raj. In addition to that, if you have any specific questions, please feel free to add them. That said, don't wait until the end. If you have questions, please feel free to add them as we're going along. We definitely want to get your input to make sure that we understand what you need from us, because that's the best way we can personalize this webinar here today. With that said, let's talk about number 1, who are we? Beyond Key is a software development and solutions organization. We have a few different divisions underneath us. The first one is Beyond Intranet, which provides Intranet Microsoft 365 solutions like SharePoint. We provide, obviously, Power Platform, which includes Power BI, as well as Azure, and then Dynamics as well. There's also the Beyond Voice division, which provides vision and voice solutions, things like NLP, machine learning, AI, Gen AI, things of that nature. We have over 150 satisfied clients and growing, and we've been in business for over 18 plus years. With over 300 plus global experts that we work with on an ongoing basis, we have a global office presence in Chicago and Indianapolis here in the US, based here in Chicago, along with delivery centers in Indore, Pune, and Hyderabad in India. We also have a global clientele. In addition to having clients in the US and Canada, we also work with clients across Europe, the Middle East, India, and Australia. And we support clients across multiple industries as well, including but not limited to healthcare, retail, banking, insurance, real estate, e-commerce, nonprofits, ISVs, construction, manufacturing, consulting services, logistics, and tourism, just to name a few key industries that we work with. In regards to this webinar, I already mentioned, please let us know what questions you have. Use the Zoom Q&A as we're going through this webinar today. Definitely feel free to add that in. We definitely want to make sure that we're answering your questions, not only through a verbally at the end of the webinar, but also when we can, we want to write it out as well. We like to make sure we're giving you 2 different types of learning styles that you could use to get the most out of the questions that you have and help answer them. With that said, I'm going to pass this off to Raj, and he's going to talk to you a little bit more about using the data challenges and talking about Microsoft Fabric. Raj, why don't you get started?
All right. Okay, it looks like I cannot start the video, but it's okay. So again, my name is Raj Krishnan, and I work with Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft about 20 plus years. And prior to that, I worked for Big Five, like Anderson Consulting, Accenture, and then prior to that, engineering, call center. I work with strategic partners, but in this particular case, I'm on the board of Beyond Key. So I usually provide them some guidance and help them accelerate adoption of Microsoft technology. So data and AI is one of my sweet spots, particularly these days. I'm doing quite a bit of AI. Who doesn't? And I also teach data warehouse and analytics here at Illinois Institute of Technology as well. Okay, enough about me. So, I think today our context is about, what about Microsoft Fabric? But prior to that, I just wanted to get some context, right? So the challenges that everyone faces is that, like, if you had all your data, or even if you had 80 to 90% of the data in a single system, I don't think that we would be kind of looking at another system for analytics, right? So clearly, for whatever good or bad reason, you have multiple data sources. You have an SAP, you have ERP system, you have Dynamics, you have Salesforce, you have homegrown systems. And then just like your transactional systems need their own data, you need some way of bringing all this data together, because reporting and analytics is always across all this data that is scattered across, right? So the 4 V's that we typically talk about, volume, velocity, veracity, and variety, has contributed to the need for how do we bring all this data. And then particularly, in previous days, we were quite satisfied with some of the SQL Server data and some commerce data. But now more and more, now we have social media data. And if you're in manufacturing, you have IoT sensor data, or you have real-time streaming data. Not only that now, in order for you to have any competitive advantage, it's no longer enough to kind of monitor your orders and structured data. You're getting all kinds of other data that are coming in, right? So that's a big challenge. Now then, the bigger thing, initially people didn't think about it, but now data governance is a major issue, particularly with the GDPR and all the compliance requirements. And forget about compliance requirements. Even internally, you have sensitive data. You want to control the data. Now, in transactional data, you have the ability to give some roles and say, hey, if you're an administrator, you can do this. When you're bringing all this data and then dumping it all in a place, and then now you're allowing people to do for reporting purposes, you don't have that kind of a structured, user-based, role-based access control for this analytical data. So whereas you control everything in transactional, as soon as that thing gets dumped into your big data warehouse, now anybody can see it, right? So it's not only a violation, it's also critical to have some kind of a governance, right? When I say governance, it's not only about who can have access in terms of encryption and data stewardship and a whole bunch of other things. In a lot of these old Power BI-driven, data visualization-driven things, we really didn't pay attention. But now with a lot of these legal things, people are saying, okay, I have a big data warehouse. How do I control? How do I govern that, right? That's a bigger system. Now, the other bigger thing, it's good and bad, is the availability of tools, right? Now, every time, particularly AI has really created a tremendous amount of tools in the market. Like every day you're seeing something new. And then you don't want to be stuck with, forget about whether Microsoft or not, you don't want to be stuck with a proprietary system where the open source is generating all kinds of things. Let's just take an example, right? Even for data transformation, there used to be major players like Informatica and Microsoft SSIS. Now look at the tools that you have. You have Python, now you have Polars, now you have DuckDB, you have PyArrows. I mean, all these really amazing technologies just popping up. And you don't want to choose something and say, you know what, I can't use it. So whatever system that you use should be able to accommodate this evolving open source system, So you cannot be say, I only work with pandas and Py, because now suddenly there is something called Polars, which is written in Rust. Does a tremendous job of doing some of these things. DBT is another open source, but with a hosting option. There are so many tools, right? So how do we make sure that we don't make a mistake? If you just purely went open source, then you need all the skilled resources to do that. But if you just went with the proprietary, now you're not able to use those things. These are all very conflicting things. And of course, every time you see somebody, Gartner saying this, somebody saying this, Microsoft saying this, suddenly there's a big fight between Databricks and Snowflakes because they are the leading. I mean, all kinds of analyst things, which does not have context of who you are, right? They're not saying whether you're a person with 2 terabytes of data, you're looking for a major system with real-time thing, or you're a small, medium business. And recently I just met a company, they were all on Snowflake. They say, oh, now we are on DBT. I said, why? Oh, DBT is the next coolest thing. And then in the next sentence, he said, we started with an open source and then we went to the cloud. Now that thing is so expensive. First of all, did you need it or did you go for it because it's a good tool? Did you go for that because of that, right? So the analyst recommendations, we just kind of, look into it. And then the standards, right? Standards are also evolving from a healthcare standards, compliance standards. You need to be aware of it. And the tools, God, how many tools do we have, right? If you look at the ETL, there is SAP, there is AWS Glue, there's Azure Data Factory, Google Data Flow, Informatica, Oracle, SAP, IBM, and the old SSIS, open source, Talent, Pentaho, Hadoop, man. And not that one tool is better or worse, they're all very capable tools, but how do you make a decision on this? Now, the biggest challenge is that, I can talk about all this. I'm struggling every day when a new technology comes. I want to learn it, but it's too much for even the smartest people. So anyone to make a decision and have the skill available, the lack of skill resources is a major issue, right? So that's another thing. And then this AI, right? AI is definitely changing, right? You're no longer satisfied with a bunch of dashboards and reports. Now you want to do analytics, right? So I'm no longer interested in saying a nice, cool Power BI dashboard. I'm interested in saying, okay, if you get this data, besides your regular reporting, are you able to do this for doing forecasting or predictive analytics or customer recommendations? So having to use the data for analytical purposes, and even more importantly, does your platform allow evolution of tools with AI? Right now, everybody's using AI. If you look at Microsoft, for example, there's AI tool for every product that Microsoft makes now. You go to Word, there is a Copilot. You go to PowerPoint, give it a PDF, ask it to make slides, it makes the slides. You go to Microsoft Fabric and say, write me a DAX query, there is a Copilot. You go to write a Python and say, can you write a Python script to process this and create a JSON output? Copilot does it for you, right? So it's not only you using Copilot in your thing, the tool sets, are they making it easier for you with the use of AI, right? Everybody's doing it now. If you look at Snowflake, Databricks now, they try to help you create the table and even modeling. Like recently, there is something called semantic link in Microsoft thing, which actually completely documents your data lake in terms of what it should be done. You can programmatically do it, right? So there are a lot of tools. So you should look at the system to see how are they supporting their platform with this AI, not only to use the product, but also for you to develop some of these things. So those are very, very important things. We talked about scattered data. Then it's kind of the siloed data. It addresses the kind of same thing in the sense the data is scattered, but then how do we, even if you get the data, they are in different silos. Sometimes it's intentional flight, like for example, when you look at data and AI, there are multiple approaches, right? There is a data mesh approach, or there's a data fabric approach. The difference is in data mesh, you want to have, it's kind of siloed in the sense, it's like, and anyone who is familiar with application design, what we call domain-driven design, the data has a domain, and then you give them the freedom to nurture, curate, and maintain it, let's say marketing or finance, and then they kind of have a freedom to do this, and then you use it across multiple entire organization. Whereas on the data fabric side, it's that old Kimball and Inman type of thing, right? Where you say that I want to create a centralized repository with the data freak with the metadata so that it is common across that. It's not one is good or bad, depending on your size and the complexity and the urgency of certain departments and the need to be independent. A data mesh may be better, or a data fabric may be better. So all these things are not making it easy for customers to do something very quickly. So can you go to the next one? Just the one before, the animation piece. Yeah. So, when I go, people always ask me, so what's new now? You guys first said SQL Server, and then you said SSIS, and then you said Synapse, then you said Azure Data Factory and all that, Data Flow, Power BI, and now you're saying Fabric, right? What is this? What am I supposed to do? So this is a typical thing, particularly in the Fabric is relatively new. So why did Microsoft reinvent this platform? And there's a good reason for it. One is all this technological evolution that I mentioned. And I just read this morning an article how a guy wrote how you can use Fabric to do DuckDB and Polars, right? They are actually doing some of the things Data Factory does, or Power BI does, or some other Python notebook does. But the fact that somebody is talking about Fabric as a platform, not as a product, is the reason why Microsoft went back to the board. So that's the difference between Microsoft Fabric and the old things where it was very Microsoft-centric. But now Fabric, if anybody's starting new, I would strongly recommend Fabric because it gives you the ability to add Databricks in case you want to add it, or to have Snowflake and bring it on board. But if somebody has, as much as I'm a Microsoft person, I just simply don't go have Fabric. But if most of your investment is on a particular product, 90% of it is in Databricks, and you're doing a lot of the things, there may not be an incremental value. But if you are looking for a platform where you want to bring a lot of these things together, or start with what Fabric can do most of these products can do, but some of them do it better. Like Databricks is very powerful when it comes to PySpark type of data transformation, high computational requirement. And Snowflake, very strong with relational type of work. But Fabric has elements of all of that, may not be leader in each aspect, but if you're starting, Fabric gives you that platform approach. That's why they went back to that thing. I went to Microsoft Fabric conference. Believe it or not, there was Databricks as a partner, Snowflake as a partner, Remio as a partner, because they look at Fabric as a platform where all these things can come together. And the whole thing is now, that's what I feel that the reinvention is to create a kind of an open platform, but still provide the capabilities, things like your Power BI, the semantic model, your data governance with Purview and PySpark, right? Ability to run notebook, like all of that. Yes, it doesn't tie you down to a Microsoft product. It's not that you have to use this. You can use Snowflake for your data, SQL, and use for unstructured data and machine learning. Fabric, bring the data from Snowflake. Actually, what they call connectors that can connect either virtually or bring the data. So the reason for reinventing the platform rather than a product is to make it evolve with the standards and be compatible with people who have made their investments. So to me, this was a great decision by Microsoft to create a platform rather than a product that forces people or limits people to use only Microsoft-only tools. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, so now when we look at some of the components, the way that the structure is, when you go to Fabric, there is a tenant, right? And then within the tenant, there is the workspace. And then if your organization is bigger, the workspace kind of, it is to create some kind of a space and a data lake within that. And depending on the size of the organization, within the tenant, you'll have a Fabric capacity, and you may have more than one or two workspaces, which means you may have data that is very specific to that workspace. And then what they call a domain. A domain may include more than one workspace for a governance perspective, right? That's how it's structured. So you buy a Microsoft Fabric, create a tenant, which means, let's say, your own business. And within the tenant, you create one or more workspaces and create domains to link those workspaces based on your domain, and then use the Fabric capacity. And if you need more capacity, you may create a new capacity and add new workspaces in that. That's the kind of structure. So the fact that they call it one lake is that even if you have multiple data lake houses, you can have a hub where you can expose a lake house from one workspace to another workspace. So the one lake is the unification of all these data sources in that, right? And then there are tools like Data Factory or Data Flow where it is for orchestration. When you look at it, what are the three core components? Like you need to store the data. You need to store the data from multiple sources, dump it, do some transformation. And once you do the transformation, create what I call a data product. Create either a relational data warehouse for reporting or create data for machine learning and analytics, right? Those are when you kind of narrow it down, that's the thing. And then on top of all this, have governance. So if you look at it, OneLake is your unified data store. And then if you look at the bottom, I say shortcuts and mirroring. When we say OneLake, there are many things you can do. You can dump everything into OneLake, replicate the data, or you can say, I want to leave the data where it is, things like something like what Remio does, virtualization, and use a shortcut. In other words, this is why I said it's a platform. I can be in Microsoft and connect AWS S3 using a shortcut without moving the data. Of course, the price that you pay is the latency or the cost of when you do query, ingress and egress, yes. But sometimes if that is a very small amount, it doesn't make sense to dump everything. You shouldn't if you don't have to. But there is an option where you create a shortcut and leave the data where it is, but give a uniform, visually it looks like, logically it looks like it's a single in a modeling wise, but the data remains where it is. And we have shortcuts to like a S3 or so many other data storage, right? And then the mirroring is like a lot of times you don't want to do a what I call a ETL or ELT, but you just want to mirror Snowflake, for example, and you want to mirror Cosmos DB. And then once you're in, run a Python notebook on that to extract the data that you want, right? There are two ways to do it. One is extract the data and dump it in data lake, or mirror the data in Fabric and just do some of these transformations and use it for your semantic model, right? That's what this thing does. And then in terms of real-time streaming, either using Kafka or your IoT hub from Microsoft, you could do real-time thing as well. I was at the International Manufacturing Traders Show. Microsoft has a very neat solutions where on the floor, you can use all this OT data, sensors and SCADA and MES, and run it locally using a Kubernetes cluster, but only send the data back to the cloud and use Power BI and things like this, right? So the ability to have real-time streaming data using any open standard or IoT hub data or Kafka, any of those real-time event-based data that's coming in. And then if you want, you can create some of the data in a relational data warehouse. Because I don't think that now you can say, probably Databricks would say you don't need a relational data warehouse. But if you go to Snowflake, they'll say, oh, you only need relational database. That's the one that you know. But here, Microsoft gives you that flexibility. Let's say if you're doing constant reports and dashboards, put some of those data from data lake and the OneLake, the lakehouse, into that relational data house. Let's say you're doing a lot of machine learning. You don't need to put it in relational. Keep it as a Parquet or a CSV file and run your this thing, right? That's what we mean by unified data warehouse. And the other big strength of the Microsoft Fabric is, if you look at Databricks and Snowflake, they do not have their own cloud. That's why they run on multiple clouds. Let's say, again, this year, if you're a multi-cloud person and you want a solution that doesn't depend only on Microsoft, I think you should definitely consider a lot of those alternatives. But if you're not a multi-cloud person, you're doing a lot of the things in Azure, then the Fabric, it makes even more sense for you, right? So you have the ability to store the data using data lake. You have the ability to do data ETL using data factory, data flow, Python, whatever your choice of thing. And then more importantly, the most popular thing, Power BI is so strongly tied to the semantic model to the Fabric that it's like a seamless thing, right? Where the data lake, you create a semantic model on top of that. So it's a perfect fit. So if you're a Power BI user, there is almost no reason for you to consider unless these capabilities don't meet your need, right? To me, another big thing, let me just talk a little bit about Data Activator. I know everybody thinks about dashboard, but the Data Activator is something where it's alert-based system, where you set up, let's say if the trend goes one way or the other, we will go to, we want to be notified. So the Data Activator is the true notification system that is data-driven, right? That's another thing. And a major thing, there is Copilot in all of this. There's Copilot when you want to do DAX query. There's Copilot when you want to do Python. There's Copilot when you want to do natural language queries on your data using Power BI semantic model. So this is the whole platform that makes it very interesting and very comprehensive. And then the data access with the purview, nobody else has this, not Databricks, not Snowflake. The data governance tool integrated very well with Fabric is a major, major bonus when you're using Fabric. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Yeah, I mean, this is, if somebody asks me, show me how did you come up to this, I'd say, I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of a quantitative. But this is, we looked at various aspects, and these are major players. And in a way, I'm a little surprised that Fabric has not been mentioned as much as Databricks and Snowflake, because probably it's relatively new. People still don't understand what Fabric can or cannot do. But if you look at it, capabilities, a lot of them have. I just read an article that Databricks has data SQL now. So they want to enable, I'm an old-fashioned person. I like fact tables and dimension tables. That's what I teach. Whereas Databricks would say, no, one big table. Everything is one big table. Let's use PySpark to do all the queries. This big engine can do that. It'll be faster. I still believe in that kind of a thing. So, but now suddenly I look at Databricks, they have that data SQL that can simulate the feeling of this fact and dimension tables, right? So capabilities-wise, these tools don't vary that much. But in terms of a comprehensive platform for data science, like data science, think about the Microsoft advantage of the OpenAI platform linked to the data lake, right? No one else has that. The ability to use in a private network, having access to the data lake data, running it on OpenAI Studio for your machine learning workload with inferences without anything ever leaving your thing. Nobody else has that. So, and data governance, frankly, everybody relies on third-party tools. They may say that as a big advantage that, you have the freedom. That's what happens to software companies. When they don't have it, they say, you can use everybody else, we don't stop you. But if you look at it, data governance is not an easy thing to integrate when you have a data solution. So having something that works very well with the data store, like Purview and Fabric, is a major, major advantage. So we just kind of did a little bit of an assessment. You can see that. But still, I feel Microsoft Fabric kind of exceeds in all of these. If there is anything, let's say if you have a very heavy Python-based workload or a very really relational, Snowflake and Databricks may have some edge, but it is in no way because you're having a less capacity or capability in Fabric that you need to look at those solutions. And then if you really need it, the good thing is unified catalog from Databricks is easily integrates with Fabric as well, right? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so I think we started this webinar saying about cost-effective solution, right? Whereas we cannot tell you how much it is going to cost you, but I can tell you, the previous slide showed you the capabilities, but I can clearly tell you, when you look at end-to-end lifecycle cost of ownership with software as a service platform, Fabric, you will find a tremendous cost advantage. Not only that, this flexibility of using these tools, like for example, and that's why people like Bianchi can help you. What I usually ask people to do is once you decide your data lake and your data transformation, you can identify the most cost contributing things. I can tell you what I have seen in things. Storage is probably the least expensive. Data, ETL, and ELT processes, often major. Like Databricks, when you run it, all these PySpark clusters, distributed clusters, that's not cheap. And even when you run PySpark on Fabric, that's not cheap. So now the ability to run things like Polars or DuckDB or other tools is something that you should look to see if the major cost contributing factor is your ETL process. And the next thing that you're going to see, biggest thing is AI/ML. And now the tremendous advancement, like talk about small language models. And Microsoft can now give you a serverless inference capability of a 5.3, which you can use with your data lake, right? So when it comes to cost, you get a lot more flexibility. And here's where I would caution you not to just blindly take a tool, look at your solution, where is the cost contributing thing, and insist on your partner like Bianchi to say, okay, you know what? If I use something else, will it reduce the cost? Okay, I don't want to use Data Factory. That thing is expensive. I don't want to run PySpark. Can you try PyArrow? Or can you try something like Polars to see, or DuckDB? Will it reduce my cost? This is where it's not about paying more money to Microsoft. It's making sure that you take advantage of the platform, identify the cost areas, and use it. Power BI, definitely data visualization, right? It's a major, one of the most cost effective. The reason it's very popular compared to Tableau or other things. It's the ease of use and the cost factor, right? And then if you're having Purview, that's also one of the low-cost data governance solutions. So when you look at capabilities and ownership, you will find Fabric is something that you cannot ignore. I'm not saying it is the best solution. It is something that I would take this and see why you cannot do what you want to do on Fabric. I can guarantee you from a cost comparison, you will come out a lot more, low cost and optimal cost with Fabric and its capabilities. So let's move on to the next. Okay. So, yeah, go ahead, Andy.
No, so as we were talking before, so just going on to the next thing. So one of the things we had some questions determined ahead of time from people. One of them was, I'm bombarded with choices: Databricks, Snowflake, etc. Why choose Microsoft Fabric?
Yeah, I mean, they're all very good tools. I'm not going to sit here and say Microsoft is the best. Databricks is one of the very powerful and leading solutions. And as a matter of fact, they're our partners, right? Databricks runs on Azure. Snowflake runs on Azure. Snowflake, we have a very strong partnership with them. And as a matter of fact, in Fabric, you can mirror Snowflake. The unified catalog is very tightly integrated with Fabric. So my thing is, I would look at what is that you need. Don't go by analysts, and even don't go by me. First thing is see what is your need. Do you have terabytes of data? Are you a very Spark type of person? Or are you a completely relational database person? Or have you already invested substantially in any of these? And is most of your needs are already met by one of these? And then don't introduce another tool, frankly, don't. But if you are in the early stages looking at options, I think Fabric can be your beginning. And if you find, what, I like some of the capabilities of Databricks, I'm going to use Databricks for this. Fabric does not prevent you, right? So use Fabric as your global platform for data lake and data analytics. Use Power BI. Use Databricks for very efficient processing. There is a need, because a lot of things you can do in Databricks, you can run PySpark. Now, they have a very distinct, a really powerful engine with a huge volume of data and all that. But first, make sure that do you need it, right? So don't go by just simple analyst recommendation. Analyst recommendation tells you these guys are legitimate, valid players with capabilities. But your own scenario, use partners like BeyondKey to assess what is your need and what is the low cost and most effective way to do what you want to do, and then do that. And I can assure you, Fabric will be one of your leading choices when it comes to that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And then the other question is, am I limited to Microsoft tools when using Microsoft Fabric? So, I mean, you covered this a little bit already, but just want to reiterate it.
Yeah. So I read a lot of articles in Medium, and then I just saw this guy wrote. He did a little comparison of doing data transformation using PySpark and using Polars and using simply Panda, right? So the Panda and PySpark, the big difference is the parallel processing. PySpark is a Spark engine, so if you have huge amount of data, you can use PySpark, and if it's in PySpark. SQL, you have a lot of options. And it was amazing to see, and the guy used Fabric to demonstrate the variations. How Polaris, it is an open source thing, was in few seconds what it took, several seconds in PySpark even. Polaris is built on Rust, right? It's a really very efficient ETL type of thing. So when I read the article, what just stood out to me is not only about these emerging tools, where Fabric allows you to do all that on the platform, right? Now, when DuckDB was introduced, people said it was the death of Snowflake, because the number of download open source DuckDB was humongous. Obviously, Snowflake did not die, but now you can do that in Fabric, right? Which it is a very powerful SQL, low footprint engine. In seconds, it does complex SQL queries, right? So that is precisely the reason why Microsoft built Fabric, to say, no, The old days of only Windows, only Office has gone from Microsoft. If you look at all the products, right? That's clearly why Fabric is your good choice. You can, as things evolve, you can run notebooks on that. You can run, if you wanted to drag and drop, use Dataflow. If you don't want to use PySpark, or if you want to use Polars, it gives you that capability. And now built in is the GitHub integration, right? Treat it like a code. Your entire data lake treated like a code, like which dbt does some of it. You can even do dbt on Fabric. So your choice is like that's why it's kind of an open platform for you to do all those things.
Thank you so much, Raj. So for your insights into everything that we've been talking about today. So to help put this all together, we're going to switch over. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to have Raman take over, and he's going to do a demo on how Microsoft Fabric solved the specific business problem. So with that said, Raman, you ready?
Hey, hello everybody. Thanks, Andy. Hello everyone. Good morning. Let me share my screen.
It's visible.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for joining this session. I'm excited to showcase the capability of Microsoft Fabric in implementing a machine learning uh, way to solve the understuffing problem in peak season. So many businesses face unpredictable staff shortages, which can lead to delayed services, reduced customer satisfaction, higher cost of emergency hiring. So traditional methods, they rely on reactive management, but leveraging Microsoft's capability, we can utilize predictive analytics to anticipate when employees are likely to take leaves. So in healthcare industry, when critical staff are absent, patients' care may suffer. Our model predicts potential leave patterns so that hospitals or clinics can arrange for backup stuff ahead of time. So in finance industry, key operations like audits, financial reporting happen during a specific period of the year. By predicting leaves during this period, businesses can prevent costly delays and maintain regular compliances. Coming to the next slide. So this slide tells us about how we are going to solve this problem using Microsoft Fabric. We are using multiple HRMS platforms. Each of these platforms hold critical employee informations like attendance data, leave data, and working hour data. We have centralized the data by dumping it into a Fabric data lake. This allows us to aggregate attendance records, leave history, and working hour data from different sources into a single unified view. With this um, unified data, we can transfer it into an advanced predictive model, machine learning model, from where we will get the data with classification. So the predicted data from the machine learning model is grouped into risky as well as non-risky employees. Accordingly, organizations can devise their backup plan. So this is a bit more technical exhibit. Here we can see the architecture of the solution, different components of Fabric which are being used in the solution. For data ingestion, we are using data flow and data factory. Unified data is stored in Fabric Lakehouse. From Lakehouse, we are using Fabric Notebook to build our machine learning model. And the predicted data can be stored again in Lakehouse and can be used for further action. So now let's switch over to Fabric window. So this is the Fabric window, and you can see different components here. The first component is the data flow and the data factory. So this is the data flow and data factory window, which is an important component of Microsoft Fabric. It is used for data ingestion, data transformation, data aggregation. We have options of connecting to different sources here. We can transform the data. We can add, we can remove, we can add columns, we can remove columns, we can combine columns here. We can create and schedule data pipelines also. We have an AI, like if you see here, we have an AI powered assistant copilot also integrated with it. So natural language prompts can help you creating your own data flow. Only requirement is you to frame the requirement and ask it. One more advantage of data flow is it provides the low code and no code solutioning as well as code platforms also. So users can choose the approach that suits their need and skill level. You can integrate here with different Microsoft products and services. Uh, for us, with this use case, we are using Data Factory for data integration. As let me go to this and show you again. So this is the part that we are going to deal with a data factory and data flow, where we are like using it for data ingestion. As you can see here, we have multiple sources of data, be it the leave data, the data summarized, monthly attendance data, holiday data. So this is being used from source to and using data flow and data factory, we are dumping it into our data lake. So the next part is the next component of Fabric we have used is the notebooks. So Fabric notebooks are similar to that of Databricks notebook. It provides the flexibility to multiple uh, programming language. We can use Python, we can use Scala, we can use SQL, we can use R. We can, with a single line of code, you can import data, bring all the data from Lakehouse to notebooks. We can do every bit of transformations here with the programming language that you chose. So this is called a code cell, and this is interactive. That is one of the feature that Fabric notebooks have. So these are interactive cells. It helps programmers immensely, as you'll be provided with coding options here. In Fabric, within a single line of code, you can import advanced machine learning libraries. Like in here, we have used logistic regression. We have used SVC. We have used random forest. So to analyze the data, um, we can use basic plots also, like this. We can at first for the basic plots, you can understand the data, what type of data is. So even it gives us the facility of comparing the models, the machine learning models that you have created. So in here, if you see here, we have used logistic regression algorithm, SVC algorithm, and random forest algorithm, out of which we have used random forest algorithm to build our own machine learning model. So, yeah, so after creating the ML model, so you can also save the predicted data in a table in um, uh, in the data lake, which can further be used any of the endpoints. You can use the predicted data in Power BI dashboard or to any applications also. So the third component is the Power BI. We have used Power BI also to showcase the capability of Fabric, where we can say this as in the unity in diversity. So we have different components under one umbrella of Fabric with the predicted data that you have. So you can publish reports in Power BI. You can analyze the data, take appropriate actions here. In Power BI, we also have built-in Copilot. So Copilot Assistant. So you have only to ask the requirement in plain text. With few minutes, your report is ready. Though Copilot comes with a cost, but without Copilot also you can streamline your data very easily. So if you have seen in one platform, we have used data lake and data factory to bring the data. We have used advanced machine learning model in this area where we have created a machine learning model to predict the data and then save back the predicted data to a warehouse or a lake house. So with this, I'm concluding my demo, handing over it to Andy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And one second. If anyone has any questions, definitely let us know. With that said, I mentioned that we did have a few other pre-prepared questions for Raj. So Raj, the first question is that how did the data engineering tools in Microsoft Fabric compare to other similar offerings?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that Raman did was kind of highlight that, right? So the first thing he used was the data factory, the data flow tool, right, which is the low-code tool. You can drag and drop. You do the mapping, do some of the transformation, and there's something called data pipeline as well. But on the other hand, if you want to do more, if you're, hey, I'm a Python guy, I work with Panda, or like some of the tools I mentioned before, I want to try out this new thing, Polars. Then you go to the notebook, and even within the notebook, you can have either use PySpark or Panda. So when and why would you use that? Cost, complexity, size of the data, and if it's something that I want to quickly do with a drag and drop, why do I want to go write a Python program? And the skill set is another factor. Based on that, this is again, to me, I want to reiterate, you have the options, what you want to do. You can run a PySpark if it's a very complex process and huge data set and requires the RDE type of data set, distributed data set, use PySpark. And you just want a Panda, a very simple Python-based thing, do that. If not, just use data flow like I showed. And if you notice, Raman did both of them, right? He did that for just getting the data from multiple sources, because there is another big thing, connectors, right? When you do with Python and things, the way you connect versus when you do data flow, Microsoft has about 300 connectors. When you want to connect to Salesforce, you want to S3, they're out of the box connectors. So that simplicity is also another factor to consider. So you use the connector to connect, configure all your credentials, get the data, do the mapping, and do it in data flow. Okay, once I have it, I want to do machine learning type of thing, then do what Raman did. Okay, it's in data lake. I don't need to connect anything, but I need to do some complex. Then don't go do data flow then, right? So the data engineering tools gives you so many flexibility within the Microsoft platform. And at the end of the day, and all of that, then now you can create the Power BI semantic model on top of that data that you have done.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. And also, in addition to that, just trying to understand how does Microsoft Fabric help unify data across multiple data sources? Why is it unique to access these data sources?
Yeah, I'm not sure why is it unique. I mean, see, to me, here is where you need to have governance come into play. And that's what, now with these days, in my past conversations in probably 2-3 years ago would be about connecting and connectors. But now what I say is, okay, once you have all this data, you need to, first of all, unify the data, but then create some kind of a control over it so that, a lot of us did this in Power BI, if you remember, right? What we did was we would do a role-based access control and then filter out the data. But to me, you may still do some of those, but more importantly, even preventing the right people or the wrong people from not being able to access the right data should be done with the governance, right? So first thing is unifying. Use a lot of examples of bringing the data. Next thing is having a governance around it in terms of role-based access control, putting the data set, creating data sets that can be filtered and masked so that only people with proper authority can do that, right? So Fabric combined with Purview gives you all those capabilities.
Okay. Great. And then so in addition to those questions, I see a few people have asked some questions. If you do have a question, definitely put it in the Q&A. We are monitoring it right now. I got a few messages on LinkedIn. It looks like someone was asking me about they were looking to know about the slides. We generally do the recording of this because we are recording this webinar. So we will be sharing this webinar sometime next week. We have our design team just make sure and go through it's cleaned up, but we'll have this ready for you by early next week. And then in addition to that, sorry, I'm switching back and forth. So one of the things that someone was asking, this is something we discussed a little bit. Raj, can you go a little bit more in depth on security measures in place to protect the data with Microsoft Fabric?
Yeah, I mean, so first thing is, I mean, the security when it comes to analytics is a pretty odd thing, right? Because what we do, like I mentioned before, in a transactional system, when you log into Dynamics, there is a role and you get this thing is restricted. But when data is moved in parallel en masse using these connectors and gigabytes of data, there's nothing that stops us at that point, right? So from a security perspective, my thing is, like, I think all of you have heard this term, silver layer, bronze, silver, and gold layer, right? To me, the gold layer is where it is ready to be used as a product. So for me, dumping all the data and then not allowing anybody else to use it except the people who are massaging the data, cleaning the data, which is in the silver layer, and then applying things like Purview and creating the gold layer where it is governed by the proper access control and using data governance. To me, that's one way to make sure that analytical data is like, let's say, HR data, right? For HR data, if you're creating a data lake, and if you're creating either a data warehouse or in the lake is a Parquet file, use some governance measure using Purview to say that this data set, create a data set, that this data set is only allowed to be accessed by thing, and then use your Active Directory and roles to control that using Purview to say that, and there are two things you can do. One is at the application level, saying that this Power BI application can only access this data set. Another thing is at the user level, that if you are a user, based on your user, these are the data sets that are available to you. So this is relatively new. People always dump everything in analytical and use visualization, but intervening it with a governance tool like Purview is relatively new, but that's one of the areas that we should focus on. Okay, I've dumped everything. Unlike transactional system, I have no control. How do we create data sets and then use data governance to say that this application is registered to access this data? This user cannot access this data set, or I can filter the data set. I think that's some of the work that you need to do. And these are the areas like partners can help you do that, like Bianchi can help you configure that.
Okay, and it looks like we have time for probably about one more question. So I'm seeing here someone was asking more about for the automation capabilities that was talked about earlier. They have multiple different data sets that are coming in. How are you?
Yeah.
Can you go a little bit more about how to actually get that accomplished? How would that be? How would that work It looks like they're an insurance organization.
Yeah. I mean, so some of the things that Raman showed can be scheduled and automated, right? So initially you build some of these pipelines and flows and schedule them. And then the scheduling also depends upon the data source that it's coming from, the latency needs that you have, right? And then you can run these pipelines as it is possible. I mean, sometimes some of these data are not available. Some of the data are put in a FTP store. So the ETL process or ELT process is something that can be.
In terms of just in general, if your organization is looking for more help with managing your data, definitely feel free to speak with our team in regards to how we could help you with Microsoft Fabric to manage your data. Obviously, this is a 1-hour webinar. If you're looking for specific information for your organization, we're here to sit down with you. It's a free consultation, no strings attached, just so we can sit down and find out what works best for you. I just put an email in the chat, contact@beyondkey.com. Feel free to reach out to us at contact@beyondkey.com and let's set up a free consultation. With that said, I just want to thank everyone here for coming to talk about Microsoft Fabric. I'm curious if you could put in the chat, are there any webinar topics you want us to cover in the future? Let us know if there's any topics that you want to cover, and we will definitely add them to that list. With that said, please add that in now. Besides for that, though, thank you so much for joining us. That concludes our Microsoft Fabric webinar. Have a great day and a better